the feeling of greatness really is, I mean, there's a couple different sides to the feeling of greatness. I think when Moe talked about the feeling of greatness, and I've experienced this myself many times playing golf and hitting golf balls, is that I absolutely know that before I make a golf swing that I'm going to hit a great shot. I know it before it happens. And that is a feeling you get when you're playing the game or when you're extremely proficient at something. But it comes from a lot of practice and it comes from a lot of work. And what Moe Norman taught me, his the very first question I asked him was, Moe, how did you learn to do that? When I saw him do an exhibition, and he said, hard work. It's hard work. You can't buy this. And I learned very, very quickly that yes, you have to put in the time and you have to do things correctly. And modeling Moe Norman was what I did. But from the practice and from the hard work and from the time you spend, you develop a level of proficiency to where, and Moe told me one time, he said, I can't swing it badly. And I think that is the feeling of greatness, is when you can actually have a knowing that you're going to be hitting great shots no matter what, and you're going to perform well no matter what, and you're going to hit good shots no matter what. I want to say it's almost an instinct, but it's a learned feeling you get, which he called the feeling of greatness, from being so good at something that you can no longer be bad at it. I think that's a big side of what Moe was talking about. The other thing that Moe was talking about, which is an easier thing for people to relate to, is that the feeling of greatness is simply how good it feels to hit a good shot. When you hit a good shot on the club face and it comes off solid and it flies straight, it just feels so good. And I talked to Moe many times about that. And I said, why do you like to hit golf balls? And he says, because it feels so good. And that's another part of the feeling of greatness. So I think there's two sides of it, but a lot of times the feeling of greatness that Moe was talking about was that gut innate feeling he had from knowing that the moment he set up to that golf shot, he was going to hit it good. What I thought I would do today is just kind of do a quick presentation of what Moe called his feeling of greatness, which is basically what he called his golf swing. When I first walked up to Moe, I did not know who he was. In 1994, I had been practicing his swing for a year. I saw his swing on video, I recognized the plane of his golf swing, and I started I spent about 12 months working on his swing mechanics. And then I had an opportunity to finally meet him in 1994 at a clinic in Chicago, and I walked up to him and I had a bunch of questions for him. The first question was, I said, well, first of all, I said, you're the best I've ever seen. He said, I know, I'm the best in the world. And then I had the first question, which was, how did you learn to do that? Hit it so good, be so good. He goes, hard work, can't buy it. So I thought, okay, well, you got to work at this thing a little bit. And then I proceeded to become friends with him. And my goal really initially with Moe was to become a better golfer, like you. I wanted to become a better golfer. I wanted to understand what his swing felt like. The first question I had in my mind was this: what if I could just stand in his body and feel what he does just one time, right? Because isn't that what we're trying to do? Isn't that why you're here at the school? Is you're trying to learn what it feels like to swing it perfectly? That's what we're here for. So the goal of any instruction, the goal of this golf school, the goal of you practicing is to learn a new feeling, or learn the feeling of proper movement. That's what everything we're doing is all about. Well, I was, maybe a lot of people don't know my story, but I was also a struggling golfer. I was playing at the professional level, but I was still struggling just as much as anybody, and maybe even more, because I was trying to play for a living, trying to make money doing this. So I was struggling with my swing. I wanted to become a better ball striker. I played with so many good players that were better than me from tee to green. And so I started looking for, trying to solve the problem, which was find an instructor that good players worked with that could help me take my ball striking and my game to the next level. So that was in the early 90s. And I found a well-known instructor that had worked with a lot of PGA Tour players, and I spent 3 years training with him, and I got worse. And so that was kind of my overall experience with, okay, golf instruction. And I can tell you this, no one was spending more time hitting golf balls. No one was working harder. I was spending eight hours a day hitting golf balls, thousands of balls a day. That's all he was doing, and I was getting worse and worse and worse. And so I figured it had to be a couple of things. I figured it could be I wasn't working hard enough, but I don't know how I could work harder. It had to be, well, maybe I was just, not good enough. Maybe I just wasn't talented enough. But look, I had hit good golf shots before. I'd played well before. I knew that there had to be a solution there, so I didn't think that was it. Or it could be the technique, what I was trying to learn. And it seemed to weigh heavily on the fact that if I actually looked at the conventional golf swing and what I was doing at the time, it was so confusing. There was magazines all said different things. Golf instructors all said different things. My instructor would say different things every time I would work with him. There was no model. There was no reason or logic behind the model. That was my problem with it, because every lesson was different. So like everybody else, that students I teach today, I got confused, I was frustrated, and there was no model, and I was basically going, I got to quit this game, and that's where I was kind of left. Well, a friend of mine who had been playing the Canadian Tour brought a tape of Moe Norman to me and said, you got to check this out. Now, I saw this videotape, and of course, I'm watching Moe on the tape, and I see the single plane. I see Moe, what he's doing. I didn't really know there was a single plane involved, but I saw this interesting way he set up to the golf ball. But what was interesting about the video was that in the video, there were tour players that I had been competing against for years that were watching him. And I was like, well, if these guys are watching Moe, he's got to be really good. This is before I met Moe, obviously. And so then I saw Moe swing, and I'm like, wow, it looks different. It makes sense. And then I started drawing plane lines. I knew enough about the golf swing to say, okay, let's watch club movement. And I started drawing plane lines, and I realized, wow, he is on a single plane. He has actually simplified what I had been trying to accomplish, which is swing plane. All good players are trying to swing the club on a plane to get to impact. Moe was doing it in a much more efficient way, but he had his hands higher, and he had some differences in his setup. So when I finally met him in 1994, I walked up to him. Now, I'd been practicing the swing for a year. So I walked up to him, and I had questions for him. I said, you're the best I've ever seen. He said, I know, I'm the best in the world. And I said, well, how did you learn to do that? And he goes, hard work, can't buy it. And I said, well, would you mind if I grabbed your clubs and hit a few golf shots? And when Moe would do a clinic, there would be clubs scattered everywhere. I call it the Moe Norman garage sale, because stuff was everywhere, and Moe had drivers laying around, and I said, do you mind if I hit your 8-iron? He said, go ahead, go ahead. So I grabbed his 8-iron and started hitting some balls, and he looked over and he goes, it looks like me without a belly, because I'd been practicing the swing for a year prior to meeting him. And I guess that moment that he saw me, saw my commitment to what he was doing, him and I kind of hit it off and became friends. And that day, I sat down with him and I just started talking to him about his swing. And from that point forward, he would go to Florida, I would go to Florida, and I'd go over and spend lots of time with him, hitting golf balls and playing with him. And the thing about, like I said, watching him hit golf balls and taking him to the range and asking him questions about his swing, and he would teach me some things, and I would watch him do things. I would ask him questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Let me try this. And he would show me certain things. But it was, to me, the most helpful part was just being in the presence and copying him. And I could look at his lead hand grip, and I could look at my lead hand grip, and I could match it. And I could look at his address and my address, and I could match it. And I could ask him, why is your grip that way? I'd even crawl between his arms and take his hands and move his hands back, and I'd watch how his hands work. I was kind of diving inside. And the thing about it is that here's the thing to it. When I saw Moe hit a ball for the first time, all I thought in my head was, if I could just feel that one time. And really, anybody trying to learn Moe's swing, they're trying the same thing. They're trying to feel exactly what he was doing. But that's hard to do, because why is it hard to do? Because you've never felt it before. And so you've got to feel something new. So I became very good at modeling. I'm very good at studying Moe. I asked the right questions, and I was lucky enough to be able to go over and see him when I had certain questions. So I'd study his video, study my video. I'd go drive over to Titusville or wherever he was that day. I'd find him and say, hey, I got some questions for you, and I hit some balls with him. And so that whole process for me, and it took a few years. You know, I didn't have a teacher. Moe was my teacher, but he was only teaching me to the point of, hey, I'll show you this if you come over and see me. I wasn't booking lessons with them or anything. So I had to kind of just evolve and figure this stuff out myself. And that's the beauty of it, because I know my students out there aren't going to want to hear this, but you have to go through that process. You have to go through the process of you have to go through your own learning process. That's why it's my feeling of greatness. I had to learn how to develop it. You know, one of my challenges was my lead hand grip. If you look back at some of my old videos from early on, I had a really strong lead hand grip, which caused a closed club face at the top, which caused a lot of hooks. I lost 2 big tournaments hitting hooks on some of the last holes, and I knew it was because of my lead hand grip. When I'd speed up, the ball would go left. And I had to, that was the longest thing for me to figure out. The final feel for me was that lead hand grip. And I used to see Moe's grip and I'd go, how's he doing that? I mean, how is he keeping the hand in that spot? Because it doesn't feel right to me. And that's the thing, it didn't feel right to me. Finally, what I had to do is I had to put it there and go, I know it feels terrible. I know I can't hit it right now from there, but it's the last piece of my puzzle. I've got to figure it out. And I just worked my way through it. And that took me the longest time for me. And that's how I developed my own feeling, but that's how Moe really helped me, because I could model. Take my normal proper grip, which is a neutral lead hand, which I can keep square a long time, and make sure there's no side spin on the golf ball. Now, let me ask you this. How would you hit it? So I think there's some important things in golf, by the way, and I'm going to document this on this video. I don't believe you need to curve the golf ball to play the game. No. I mean, you can try, and I'm not saying there's not shots that might be better if you curve them, but to play this game effectively at a very high level, you do not need to curve the golf ball. 99% of the shots that I hit when I play are aimed straight at my target. I'm not saying they're aimed straight at the flag. I'm saying I may aim to the center of the green as my target, or to the right side of the fairway as my target, or whatever. But to curve a golf ball means I have to add an element of inconsistency to the rotation of the golf ball. Well, you don't need to do it. The only people that curve the golf ball, they curve it because of one very important reason. They know which way it's going to curve. So they make it predictable. If you hit a ball left to right every time you play, you can play the game because you know it's curving left to right every time. The guys who have the most trouble playing the game hit it left and right. They don't know which. Moe called it army golf, left and right, where am I going? But I don't believe you need to curve the golf ball. I love the conversation about curving the golf ball curvature, because this is a debate that instructors have all the time. And look, you have Moe Norman, who hit the ball straight. Granted, I had him curve the ball all the time. When I played golf with him, I'd say hit a hook, hit a draw, hit a fade, hit a slide. He did it all the time, so he could easily curve the golf ball. But he chose to hit it straight. And so the debate is, there's 2 debates. The one debate is, should you hit it straight? Is that the best way to hit a golf shot? And the other debate is it even possible for you to consistently hit it straight? And that's the argument I have with golf instructors all the time. Now, when I'm hitting the ball well, and I generally hit the ball pretty well, I hit as little side spin on the golf ball as possible, so I hit it straight. I play straight shots. When I play a round of golf, and when I teach golf, I teach straight shots. Now, why do I teach straight? First of all, I think it's possible, or I wouldn't teach it, but I think that you can absolutely hit the ball with 0 side spin. I've done it, Moe's done it, it's easy to do. Most guys out there have done it. But golf instructors will debate that because the club's coming from the inside, that it can even be a consistent thing you can do. I don't debate that. I have proof of it, that you can and should hit the ball perfectly straight. Now, can you do it on a consistent basis? Well, that's where Moe's swing comes in, because Moe absolutely wanted to hit the ball dead straight. Why? Because the way he swung the golf club kept the club square for a longer period of time, lower to the ground, more square for a longer period of time through impact, and it produces straighter golf shots. So it's a technical thing that Moe did in his swing, just from the single plane and from the way he moved the club, moved his body. So that's courage. But let's talk about why I think straight shots are the most important. It's because, here's the thing. If I aim down the middle of the fairway, so let's say it's a 30-yard wide fairway. Average fairway is probably 30 yards wide on a golf course with a driver. And I aim down the middle of the fairway, and I push it 10 yards or pull it 10 yards, I'm still in the fairway, right? If I aim it, if I hit a right to left shot, let's say I hit a draw. Let's say you're one of the instructors out there that says your natural shot's a draw, and you aim it down the middle, you only have 15 yards to work with in that fairway, the left half, right? So where you have to aim it, if you hit a draw, is to the right half of the fairway. You only have a 15-yard target line, the right half. Or if you hit a big enough draw, you got to aim it away from the fairway to get it to land in the fairway, right? So by hitting it straight, it gives you twice the chance to hit it in the fairway from a guy who hits a fade or a guy who hits curvature in a draw. Now, Mo would often say you got when he hit a shot on the green, you got 2 chances for it to go in. What do you mean by that? Well, the way there, then when it hits, if it's going straight, it's got another chance, right? If it's curving, it doesn't have 2 chances to go in. So Mo's comment, my shots have 2 chances to go in, is because he hit it straight. And if it had backspin, you got 3 chances. One on the way there, fly, land short, one on the way going, and then if it has backspin, one on the way coming back. So if you hit it straight, and by the way, very few guys curve a golf ball into the hole, right? If they catch a slope maybe and it goes in, but they hit it to a spot and the green takes it in the hole. But most shots are going straight in when they go in, and that's straight golf shots. They can't be curving off to the side.